I guess that, I think the first thing I would ask is whether it's right to think in campaigns anymore, because consumers certainly don't think like that anymore. And gone are the days when you could kind of control in a kind of traditional media environment a cadence of a story that you wanted to tell in a kind of almost in a transmit fashion. And I think some of the stuff that Jonathan's referred to there in terms of what's happening and who, the disintermediation of storytelling is a core part of that. And I think, it makes the management of a story harder, but I think you have to recognize that actually a story or a brand idea or a campaign idea will automatically start to take a life of its own, and it will bend and it will shape and it will weave over time, and that's great. And it's actually a really good thing when people start to take a story that a brand has created and make it their own. Sometimes they do it because they absolutely hate it, but in some ways that has its own learnings. And I guess so within Iris, we've for a long time always tried to embrace that, right? And say, okay, we're looking for a creative idea that people will want to engage and actively participate with, and allow them the opportunity to create things and take that story in their own spaces, in their own places. Because when we do, it becomes really powerful. So, when we work with Attest, we took Attest off telly and told them to create everything in a social environment and allow people to start playing and creating their own content that we'd kind of fired up for them, and it was being really powerful for them. They're now number one in football again after a number of years. And I think, if you look at what we're here to discuss tonight, which is this kind of idea, how do you tell a story and how do you make it right? For me, it's always been, and I think this is to a certain extent what Jonathan's referring to, it has to be authentically linked to what the brand is all about. I thought it was quite interesting that you talked about IBM being having a current North Star. Because arguably, perhaps you should have always have the same North Star. How you articulate it may change over time, but the purpose of the brand might be the same. But
yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't know whether anyone's reading Satya Nadella's current book, which is it's called Hit Refresh. So he's talking about for those of you who don't know, he's the CEO of Microsoft, and he's within 2 years of taking the charge of Microsoft, he's actually written a book, which is quite unusual for being only 2 years in. His book is called Hit Refresh, and it's basically this exact point. It's, okay, Microsoft has a core set of kind of beliefs and principles, but it's important every now and again to kind of refresh that and to kind of freshen it up and to maybe change it. And obviously there are kind of core beliefs which hopefully will travel through a company. But if you're not refreshing and reinventing every few years, you're gonna get out of touch. I think
that's fair. I think what I was going to refer to is to just take an example, which is probably our most current piece of work, because I think it makes that point and the point I was making, I guess, as well at the same time, which is, the work that we've just launched with Starbucks, which launched on Sunday on Channel 4, actually is built out of a brand truth that Howard Schultz created when he first launched Starbucks, which was to nurture human spirit, one cup, one community at a time, right? And that's fundamentally what Starbucks has always been about. A bit like when your man went into Microsoft going, oh my God, we've lost sight of what Microsoft might have been, how do we refresh it? What we did there was when we uncovered this wonderful piece of insight that to a small group of the trans community, Starbucks was the place they went to kind of find their safe space to try out their new identity and their new name. That became a really powerful story that we felt that we had to tell, not least because it is a really powerful story, but also because it fundamentally links to the whole point of how Howard Schultz set up this in the first place. Nurturing human spirit one community at a time is really powerful, and that particular story is very relevant for today, and it was completely different to the story that was relevant back at the time. But it's certainly what makes it right. But just to the point I was making about making this something people can participate with. I think why that story is hopefully going to be great, and I don't know if anyone has seen what we're doing with it, but we launched with a TV commercial, which we're really proud of. It's a wonderful piece of work, but I think what's more important than that is we created an environment where, with Starbucks, we've done a partnership with Mermaids, which is a charity that looks after young trans community and their families and helps them deal with the changes they're going through, and opened up sort of Starbucks stores to that community and said, please come have your sessions here. You're welcome in our environment. Starbucks have created little cookies with a mermaid's tail on them, and all the money goes to charity. And we're running a campaign with Instagram that says, go and take a picture of your mermaid tail so people can start to tell the story and engage with it their own way. And I guess that's fundamentally what I mean by that. I would say when I started in this business, and bear in mind my world is less PR and more sort of advertising, we'd have a campaign. And then we'd wait and see what happens, and then we'd run another campaign. Now what we're trying to do is create a springboard for other people to tell stories on our behalf. And I think going back to the question, and then I should move on, is I think when we look to, I believe that the most powerful stories are those that are authentically driven by a brand. And we've got lots of examples of brands in recent times who've kind of strayed away from their safe space and have been kind of hit hard for that. So creative ideas will transcend campaigns or spaces when they're strong and powerful and authentic.